gentlemen. First of all, let me welcome you to this beautiful building, which is the newly built part of the House of Commons building, which is the old one is a little bit away from here. But this is a newly built part, which is, I'm sure that you enjoy.
The purpose of the meeting today is to learn and develop a consensus of what's happening in Malaysia. For many of us who've been watching from abroad, in the UK and other countries in Europe and the United States, we have been aggrieved by what we've seen over the last 3 to 4 years, particularly in relation to the struggles waged by the Indian community for their rights, and the tremendous struggle that has been waged by organizations like Hindraf, where its leaders have been put in prison, incarceration for over 2 years on charges that are draconian and unfair and unjust. And we know that thousands of people in Malaysia have forged the links with them to develop a just cause for ensuring that Malaysia becomes a country which respects rights and equality within its own boundaries and in South Asia. The second purpose of this meeting, and we are privileged to welcome 3 eminent speakers who have traveled for this meeting specifically from Malaysia, and we'll hear from them their actual experience and analysis of the struggles that they waged and the conditions that they live under and what they believe is necessary for us to learn and develop a campaign in this country if possible. And our fourth speaker is a personal friend of mine, Murthy. I know him as Murthy, but others would know him by his full name. Murthy and I go back over 14 years when we were working. Is that 14 years? Maybe 10. I don't know. 18 years. When Murthy and I worked in West London on civil rights campaign, and I was fortunate to meet his brother, who also is a leader of the Human Rights Party at the moment in Malaysia, but was one of the founders of Hindraf. I was fortunate to meet him when he was traveling across Europe into the United States and was actually detained in Heathrow for some time, and when we had to release it. In relation to Murthy, we know that his personal circumstances, given the struggles that he's waged in Malaysia, has meant that he's separated from his own family. He's had to make an application to live in this country on basis that shouldn't be justified, but it's necessary, and he's a leader in exile in this country. So our first speaker, because that's really what Mr. Niranjan Ganeshan, who is the advisor to the Human Rights Party and an advisor to the Hindu Action Rights Party, Hindraf. Welcome, Mr. Ganeshan.
I'd like to stand here.
Please.
Good evening to all of you. Can you all hear me at the back?
Yes. Yes.
Honorable member of the House, Mr. Virendra Sharma, Mr. Suresh, and friends. It's really an honor to be here this evening to share with you some of our thoughts. I'm an optimist, right? And even though we are away from the ground, we think it is important that we need to create awareness all around. And we certainly believe the more awareness there is, the more support there's going to be for the human rights movement in Malaysia, not only in Malaysia, wherever, but we are focused in Malaysia. My name is Narayanan Ganesan, and I am the advisor, as Mr. Suresh pointed out. I play this role basically because I feel, the educated elite have for far too long divorced themselves from the poor, from the marginalized Indians in Malaysia. And I thought it was time, after the Hindraf rally of the 25th, that some of us stood up and spoke up, because there was enough. We've been left with, personally, many of us, many of you, I'm sure, out there who've come from Malaysia, have left the country with some kind of anger. And I think it is time that some of us stood up and spoke up. So I've taken on this role. And recently, since Uday Kumar was released, he's now actively developing the Human Rights Party, which is the political wing of Hindraf. And we are at work in Malaysia, I'd say very actively to develop the Human Rights Party and to promote the original agenda of Hindraf. What I'd like to do with you is share some of my thoughts, some of our thoughts on the violations of our human rights as we see it, as we, the aggrieved, see it. Human rights violations seldom come in ones and twos. They are a package deal. And they hurt us in many areas. At least 15 areas that we have identified. But time does not permit me to touch every one of them, so I have selected a few areas to talk about here this evening. First, on education. It says in the Malaysian Federal Constitution that we Malaysians have equal rights to education. And this, for those of us who don't happen to be beneficiaries of current government policy, know full well this is not true. We do not have equal rights in education in Malaysia. To start with, there are many aspects of education that impacts us. To start with, the majority of the poor, marginalized Indians in Malaysia send their children to Tamil schools. 50% of the Indian children who are at the primary level are in Tamil schools. And these Tamil schools have been a bone of contention for forever, ever since independence. But what we see is not progress. What we see is deterioration. From, as it says there, from about 800 odd schools when the population of Indians in the country was about 800,000, today it has come down to 523 schools for a population that's grown more than 2.5 times now. We aren't where we were. We have actually fallen back. Considering just the numbers. But if you consider the conditions of primary education in Tamil schools, right? This is an example we just clicked out from a recent report in the papers.